What in tarnation?
Hello folks, this is Applegeek, and wow, is the time ever flying this season. It seems like just yesterday I was finishing up episode 17, and here we are now with episode 18. On this one, I thankfully have avoided any and all spoilers. I have no title, no thumbnails, no hints, no anything on this one. But I do know I have some friends very much waiting to talk to me about this one, so there's definitely some hype on this. And once again, how many times can lightning strike in this season? I don't know if this is going to be another epic bombshell episode or what, but yeah, once again, I've got a good feeling about this one. So, without further ado, let's give this a watch. Episode 18, starting now.
Morning, Pinkie Pie. Get your Ponyville Chronicle right here.
Okay. Who's Pony? Pinkie episode?
I just love to read about happy happenings, and it's always good to be a pony in the know, you know? And there's so much to know.
Seems like a bunch of boring hooey to me.
Does new shrubbery in Castle Gardens sound like boring hooey to you?
New shrubbery in Castle Gardens?
News.
Sign me up.
What about Paris Bright infestation in Philadelphia eradicated? Oh, that's great.
Wait, what? It took him this long?
Another Paris Bright hype story.
Noodles named official food of Winneapolis. Author A.K. Yearling announces retirement.
Wait, what? What?
Up for candidate in favor of cooling it down.
Go back. Back up.
Never knew you were so into politics, Rainbow.
No, not about that.
It can't be true.
Oh no.
Right, I've never picked noodles as the official food of Winneapolis either, but here we are.
I can't believe
Pinkie.
that the greatest author and secret pony adventurer of all time, A.K. Yearling, is retiring.
Oop. Okay, cue the epic dash freak out. So we have a Daring Do episode, perhaps the final Daring Do episode? I don't even know what to say about this one at this point. I got no idea where this is going. I honestly don't. I just know it's gonna be crazy fun. And is this gonna be a Rainbow Dash and Pinkie? Is Pinkie tying along on this? Yes, she is.
Just retired.
This could be very.
Today. Are you sure she wants visitors?
This could be a very interesting character combo.
Yearling I know would never quit and retire out of the blue. Something could be really wrong, and we need to make sure she's okay.
Okay. Hey, you're not just trying to make
Daring
sure she
done.
writes more Daring
Jillian
Do
Barrow.
books, are you?
Of course not. That wouldn't hurt either. Now, come on.
Is Pinkie's mane, like, actually full? Because the newspaper isn't all the way inside it.
Maybe she's not home. Maybe
You
she
think?
went to the editor-in-chief of the Ponyville Chronicle to correct the misprint they made.
Nope. She's
No.
home
How do you know?
because she's right there, looking all sad and alone.
I knew it.
Uh-oh.
Something is wrong. AK.
Now she's fine with the weight of the world. Now she's hanging her head in utter despair. And now she's shaking her hoof and cursing the heavens like nothing could ever possibly be the same again. Why, oh, why did this happen to her?
Pinkie!
Whoops, never mind. That time she was just stretching.
AK, it's us. Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie.
Pinkie,
You're
leave the
friends.
drama to Rarity. Hey, AK. Okay. What's
Oh, no.
What's going on?
Did somebody ransack your cottage again and steal some ancient mysterious relic that's the key to saving all of Equestria?
Dash?
Sparky.
Ooh, that looks dangerous.
Nothing's been stolen.
Then is some pony blackmailing you and forcing you to retire? Cause if they are...
That's
No.
horse
I don't
noise.
like that.
So you're just quitting and moving away? Why would you do that?
I already explained everything to the Ponyville Chronicle.
Oh, really? Author A.K. Yearling announced yesterday that the next adventure novel in her popular series, Daring Do and the Curse of the Pharaoh's Tomb, will be her last. Yearling looks forward to her retirement. That doesn't explain anything.
No, it really doesn't. That face.
It just says says you're giving up writing stories. But most ponies don't know that you actually are Daring Do.
If she's giving up stories, that means she's giving up being Daring Do. So
is that you're giving up being Daring Do, but you're not saying why.
I should just listen.
If you don't feel like talking about it, that's A-okay, AK. As your friends, we completely understand.
Nice, Pinky.
Right, Rainbow Dash?
Oh, yeah. We just came to make sure you're all right. That's really why we wanted to find out what's going on.
If you
That's
really
one with reasons.
want to know, my last quest took me to a village in southern Equestria, where I started seeing these.
Wake of Destruction, Daring Do ruins entire village marketplace.
Dare or scare? Local rogue Daring Do involved in frightful fiasco.
Daring Do leads Bull into China shop during high-speed chase.
That's
Oh, the cliche.
Every pony I tried to help is mad at me.
That's not true. They're not mad at AK Yearling. They're mad at Daring Do.
They don't sell my books in southern Equestria. The ponies there don't know who AK Yearling is.
Oh, they only know her as real Daring Do.
And apparently she does more harm than good.
And
Got a
I guess
superhero
it
problem
doesn't
here.
look so different as AK Yearling.
So all we have to do is go down there and explain to these ponies that none of this stuff is true.
Easy peasy cheesy.
But that's just the
Sure.
thing. It is true.
What?
I guess I've always been so focused on saving priceless relics and stopping the bad guys that
Doesn't
I
think
never
about
thought the mess I leave behind.
Then you are in a tricky pickle. But why is all this happening now?
I guess ponies are finally fed up. Either way, I'm done with adventures. Having or writing.
Come on! For every one pony who's
Th-
upset,
this isn't gonna end
there's
this way.
at least
There's no way.
100 that know you're a hero.
I don't think so, Dash.
Well,
I
why
like
don't
the
we go
different
visit this
main
village,
style.
Sonnambula, and see for ourselves.
I wondered
It's
about that.
pretty clear how the villagers feel.
But if we go there, the ponies can tell you in person just how much they appreciate you.
And what a heap of rotten apple cores these articles are.
You really think so?
I know so. Let's go.
Okay. I want with the Legends of Magic comics. The next one coming out was about Sonnambula, so I wondered if that was going to be showing up in one of these. Oh, well, no, she's got like this superhero problem. You know, superheroes they all the destruction of personal property and.
Book, where Daring Do recovers the doomed diadem from the Wild Bunch gang who chase after her through the desert.
It should. I based that entire chapter on my experiences here in Sonnambula.
What happens?
Oh, it's a
wait,
location.
Don't tell me. I changed my mind. Tell me.
Daring Do thwarts Awazotle's evil plot to separate the sister crown relics. And if it wasn't for her, the region would be cursed with eternal night, and the entire town of Sonnambula would have sunk into the ground.
There's no chance that these ponies don't think you're a hero.
Want to bet?
Watch this.
Oh boy. Oh no.
Hiya there, mister. I was
Oh,
hoping you could tell
grandparent
me about
recolor.
a pony named Daring Do. I hear she's an awesome adventure pony hero.
Daring Do? Oh, she's awesome, all right.
And
Awesome at destroying ponies' apple carts. And
It's
sacred statues.
a grandparent recolor who's an apple. Okay.
Daring Do is a menace who destroys everything she touches.
What? No! Daring Do is the exact opposite of a menace.
Ugh, I tried to tell you.
She's a menace. I want pictures.
There was a mistake.
Show me pictures of Daring Do. Yes, that was a horrible impression of J. Jonah Jameson.
Come on, AK. So we picked a bad example. That was just one angry pony.
2 angry ponies.
It doesn't matter. I never should have come with you. You two should just go home.
Come on, we gotta follow her.
I don't know. It really seemed like she doesn't want us cramping her saddle.
But we have to convince her that ponies do appreciate her. As her friend, I have to make sure she believes
More
that.
like you need to help the.
Look, Pinky.
There's different ways this could go. I'm not
In.
really not sure.
Stays her all the time in her adventures.
Oh.
Which means there must be ponies here who love Daring Do. Maybe they can help us.
My nose is telling me to help myself to muffins.
Muffins! Yay!
taking residence here?
Pinky is channeling her inner
Southern
Rarity.
Equestria are you on about?
Who stays here?
Not anymore, she doesn't.
Ooh.
Why not? The last time I rented that rascal a room, she was in such a rush to hightail it out of here, she didn't even pay her bill. But after that, a band of ruffians showed up and destroyed half the rooms looking for her. Guess she made them even more mad than she made me.
No, you got it all wrong.
How do you
Does
think?
she?
Daring Do was trying to save every pony from the curse of the doomed diadem of Zilati. And she was only in a rush because she had to get the crown back to the tiara of Teotlale before the curse took effect. Chapter 17.
Sounds like a tall tale to me. And a hard one to believe now that I know Daring Do is a scoundrel and a thief. Every year, ponies come to offer precious glow pads to the Sonnambula statue in the village in hopes for a good future. Why, that poor fella had his glow pads necklace stolen by Daring Do just yesterday.
Is that Caballeron?
There's AK!
Daring Do ruined our town and stole our precious Glopes.
I'm pretty sure that's Caballeron.
That if she turns up again, there
And
will be
he's
consequences.
ruining her
Every
reputation.
pony who's with me, meet at the statue tomorrow.
Now I'm getting blamed for things I didn't even do? Why
Yeah,
would I steal from them?
They are super bad! But we're still staying the night, right? I already ate all the free mini muffins.
Listen, AK, after a good night's sleep, we're gonna fix all of this. I promise.
Gonna expose the fraud for what he is and restore her hero status.
Rainbow Dash, this is never gonna work.
Of course it will. All I have to do is go up there and explain to every pony how wrong they all are.
Yeah, and then I'll be like, what she said.
Easy peasy cheesy.
Exactly!
Here it is! The remains of your
Thought it should have been easy peasy lemon squeezy, but whatever.
Sonnambula statue. Now that Daring Do has destroyed it, tell me, where will we hang our Glopes?
We don't even have any glow pads because they were stolen by Daring Do.
More like by him. She would not do that.
Daring Do would never steal anything. And okay, she destroyed your statue, but it was because she was trying to save you all from Owie Zodal. Owie Zodal, he's about yay big, long neck, itty bitty
nice
face,
pyramid.
weird claw thingy on his tail.
Oh, I know him. He's a baddie.
Trust me, if Owie Zodal had gotten away with the doomed diadem, your entire village would have been swallowed up. And that's a lot worse than losing some crummy old statue.
True.
This was not some crummy old statue. It was the namesake of our town.
We gotta get a backstory.
To understand us, you must first understand her.
Yep.
Sonnambula.
Yes.
Long ago, this village fell prey to an evil sphinx who demanded most of their crops.
Oh.
Like her fellow villagers, Sonnambula didn't have much.
But she
she
used
is.
what she had to keep others from giving up hope.
The son of the pharaoh, Prince Hizan, was so moved by her compassion that he decreed no pony would go hungry again.
It's a Egyptian.
But when Hizan
Ethnic references.
stood up to the sphinx, the beast captured him,
Telling the pharaoh the only way to get Hizan back was to solve her riddle.
no pony would volunteer to save the prince.
No pony except Sonnambula.
Okay, so what's she gonna do?
The sphinx gave her the riddle.
I shine brightest in the dark.
That voice.
I am there but cannot be seen. To have me costs you nothing. To be without me costs you everything. As Sonnambula thought of the hardship she and her fellow villagers had experienced, she instantly knew the answer. Hope! She shouted. The Sphinx was so enraged, it
Yes!
seemed she might still refuse to release the prince. So Sonnambula asked her for one more challenge. But if she accomplished it, the Sphinx would leave from the kingdom forever. The Sphinx quickly agreed, asking only that Sonnambula walk to the prince across a deep chasm,
Oh.
blindfolded. Further,
Oh, come on.
the Sphinx had cast a powerful spell that prevented Sonnambula from flying.
Oh. No cheating.
But Sonnambula never lost hope. She knew she'd need to make a leap of faith to save the prince. Guided by the sound of the prince's voice, she
Very
easily
easy.
made it across.
Yes. Wow.
The pharaoh asked how Sonnambula prevailed, and she explained that she had always hoped she could make things better for her people, and that hope had carried
Great
her
leader.
through. The prince replaced the pearls Sonnambula gave up with a string of glow pads.
Globus,
And around
okay.
her neck they glowed bright enough to light the entire kingdom.
Oh, wow.
Forever after, glow pads became our symbol of hope.
That's incredible.
I had no idea how special the statue was to you. Sonnambula sounds like a pretty cool pony.
Can see why
I bet if she were
Sunburst
here,
likes her so much.
how cool Daring Do is too.
How does she
Because they
read
both fought
spells
to
when she's
protect this
Pegasus?
town.
Alright.
If Sonnambula were here today, she would condemn Daring Do for destroying our symbol of hope.
Really? That's putting words in her mouth. That's unfair. Okay, they're gonna turn this around somehow. I'm just not sure how yet.
Hey, buddy! What did Daring Do ever do to you to deserve all this?
Just everything.
Caballeron?
Yes.
Duh.
Rainbow Dash. When I saw you, her closest friend, I knew that Daring Do would not be far behind. I really do owe you for leading her right.
Thanks, Dash.
I didn't mean to.
Thank you for helping me break Daring Do's spirit by destroying her reputation. But I can't have you running off and tell you plan.
Uh-oh. No, there's all the henchmen, or hench ponies.
Caballeron? No!
He's got Rainbow Dash. Come on.
Alright, AK, are you gonna be able to overcome your issues?
Coming. Rainbow Dash.
How did she get worn out already?
You'd come.
You did? I sure didn't. What if I cause more trouble?
You won't.
You won't.
I just do. You wouldn't let anything happen to Rainbow Dash. You care too much.
Mm-hmm.
Which way did they go?
Oh, nice statues.
To the pyramid!
So many cliches, but it's awesome. And right back in the same. Yeah.
Don't worry, Rainbow.
No bridge this time, though.
I'll save you.
Oh, come on.
If my previous plan didn't cause you to give up, Daring Do, and the shame of losing your dear friend, Rainbow Dash to the slime will. Oh, and that ancient magic from the legend is real. There'll be no flying in the pyramid.
Oh.
Daring Do.
So it's like an inherent area spell. Oh. Wow.
Wait! We'll never get to her in time.
If this really is like Sonnambula's story, then we just have to have hope that we can.
I think we need more than hope, Pinky.
You need a bridge.
There's a bridge in the story, and there's no bridge here. What are we gonna do?
I don't know. Rainbow Dash is our friend, just like Sonnambula. We need to make a leap of faith and hope that we can save her.
Pinky!
Okay. What the? What the? Where did those come from?
I knew we'd do it.
Thanks for reminding me to never give up hope, Pinky.
And I'm kinda hoping you ponies will untie me before we all take a bath in bubbling green slime.
Yeah, it's probably acidic or something. Okay, sure. After him! And there go all the green, the Glopez, I think they're called.
Fast, Caballeron.
Yep.
You stole our glow pads!
Yep.
I should have known you were just trying to sully my name so that you'd be free to steal whatever you wanted.
Of course that was the plan, Daring Do. At first, I just wanted the glow pass. But then...
More monologue? Really?
...opportunity to write you out of the story for good! And with the destruction you leave in your wake, it didn't take too much to convince ponies you were a villain.
You're wrong, Caballeron. And I won't let you break my spirit again. Because I'm never gonna give up hope that I can protect ponies and ancient treasures from miscreants like you.
Yes! Very inspiring.
She ruined your statue. You're fools to believe
So?
her.
Can rebuild the statue.
You're safer than Daring Do.
And he gets away again.
Okay, that's enough. Thanks for helping me come to my senses. You two are true friends.
Are you kidding?
Wow.
Was awesome!
Glad you're back to your old self again.
Me too. But I'm glad I realized that even if you're fighting for something good, you're still responsible for your actions.
And
Yes.
if something bad happens that you didn't intend, you shouldn't give up hope or lose faith in yourself.
Yeah, all you gotta do is make it right. Feel free to use that in your next book.
You know, I think I will.
Very good lesson. Now Pinky gets to be in a Daring Do book? Aw. Ah! Yep, payback for the... Nice. His name is Mud now. Oh, there you go. New statue. You can rebuild a statue, but you can't replace people or ponies, so... Wow. Great story. Great lesson. I'm still confused, though. How... now I need to get my hands on the comic for this. The comic that expands on this character, because I'm curious how Sonnambula as a Pegasus wrote spells. That seems very strange, because Sunburst is using, referenced like 2 different times, spells from Sonnambula. So, I need to know more about that, but... so many thoughts going through my head. I'm not going to ramble. I'm going to cut, rewatch, and I'll be right back. Stay tuned. Alright, everyone. Well, clearly this season has switched gears as I predicted a while back, and we are now in the action, adventure, and world-building segment. The first half of the season really just dealt mostly with all character development stuff and families and things like that, and now we're getting into a lot more interesting things. We're starting to get the story arc finally built for the season, and it's looking very interesting. These last 4 episodes, we've been bouncing back and forth rapidly. So we had, the return of Thorax and Ember both, and got some, little hints about things going on with the Changelings. Then we move to the, got 3 legend stories, historical legend figures of Equestria. Then back to the Changelings again with an adventure episode with the Malworth and everything, and showing that, hey, the Hive is now doing well with its new leadership, and they've all converted and everything except for Chrysalis, presumably. And then back here again to adventure episode with Daring Do and another legend story. So yeah, there's a lot of quickly bouncing back and forth between these 2 kind of storyline things here, and the legends and the changelings. And because of that, I can't help but think that the season finale is going to involve Chrysalis and the legend characters in some regard. I have no idea how they're going to put those 2 things together. I just don't honestly believe that we're going to leave Chrysalis hanging until season 8. I really don't. Not with all the new information we've gotten on the changelings. So, but I have no idea what kind of a story they would actually be putting together for that. So, just have to wait and see what they come up with. But this episode in particular, you know, definitely, you know, like I said, fun adventure episode. Bit predictable. Was kind of very, you know, straightforward. It, you know, I couldn't see exactly where it was going all the time, but it you know, as each piece of the story progressed, it did, you know, make sense from one piece to the next. There's no major twists and turns, shocking things or whatever. So it felt like it was very quiet this episode. I do apologize for that. I do know during the legend story, the backstory, it was, I just got so sucked into it. It was so interesting. It was hard for me to kind of pull back from that and comment on things. So it was just that good. And it's really hard for me to actually figure out like which legend story is best. That right now this one is kind of neck and neck with Mistmane. I'm kind of leaning towards this one being my personal favorite for reasons which don't really make sense, but whatever. It just it's a good one regardless. So but yeah, interesting things happen. I'm gonna do my best to avoid like actually recapping the whole episode because you don't want to hear all those boring minutia. I'm just gonna jump to a few key things here. Locations. So we got new locations defined in this based on that map that appeared. I compared that to the known world map of Equestria, and we know that the village of Sonnambula is down somewhere in the San Palomino Desert. So that's a new place we haven't been to before. Interesting layout of it. It's, you know, definitely tying into Egyptian culture with, you know, the pharaoh and the hieroglyphics and all that stuff. Definitely really love the hieroglyph type animation stuff they were doing for that backstory. Is very unique and different. I did notice one very interesting thing about that though. The royal family, the pharaoh and his family were all Pegasi, and they had, you know, like statues in there that were portraying Pegasi characters and such, but all the other ponies in there, besides the royal ones, were Earth ponies. I didn't see any Pegasi servants. I didn't see any unicorns anywhere. So I'm not sure what the significance of that is in terms of comparison to, you know, our historical record of ancient Egypt. I'm sure there's some reason for portraying it that way. Whatever the case may be, there was definitely a social caste system in place where the Pegasi were, you know, the high up royalty, and the Earth ponies were lowly servants at the time. That's what it looks like. But it doesn't look like they were like bitter about it or anything. I mean, clearly Sonnambula cared very much for her people, and, you know, to this day they still love her and everything. So it was nice to see they were at least getting along. But fast forward to present day, you've got all three races represented in the current village. So clearly you can see that things have changed in the society over time. You know, assuming this was the early days of Equestria, it probably wasn't, you know, they weren't really fully up to speed with the whole, you know, all three tribes living in harmony thing yet. You know, it takes time for things like that to change. So it's just interesting to see that that difference. So for that matter, even in the other stories that we saw, the tribes all look pretty segregated at that point. The Flash Magnus, that story focused purely on the Pegasi. Rockhoof, I think that was his name, Rockhoof. That was a village of Earth ponies, and I don't remember seeing any unicorns or anything there. And then with Mistmane, it was a village of unicorns. So again, you know, just little things like that actually, you know, open up avenues of discussion on this. But anyway, back on topic. The other location was, we finally know where Daring Do's or AK Yearling's cottage is at. To my knowledge, we've not known that before. Now we know it is up north of Van Hoover, so it's way off up in the northwest corner of Equestria. And it's significant only from the standpoint of why the heck did she publish her retirement announcement in the Ponyville Chronicle, a small town newspaper in a village a long, long away from where she lives. Now you could come up with any form of, any number of explanations for this, being that it's like, you know, maybe she wanted Rainbow Dash to know before anyone else. Maybe it was just convenient she was on her way home from someplace else. Don't know. But then why didn't she stop and see Rainbow Dash? Yeah, there's all manner of questions around that. I think more or less it's just a convenient storytelling device, and that's about all it was ever meant to be. But is an observation, make of it what you will. it just seems like it would have made more sense to publish it in like Canterlot or someplace a lot more public and widespread, but whatever. The Daring Do concept as a whole, I am very much applaud Jillian Barrow for finally touching on this. I wasn't in the fandom back then, but basically everything I've been told is that when Daring Don't aired back in season 4, the significant amount of the fandom was just all up in arms because this doesn't make sense. You took what was supposed to be a fictional storybook character and shoehorned her into being a real pony in the real world of Equestria. Real. As it doesn't really make sense. Like, how do you have the two separate in the same world? It doesn't make any sense. As I don't necessarily disagree with that sentiment. I just never really let it bother me that much because, like, yeah, it doesn't make the most sense, but I like the character, I like the stories around her, so sure, just don't think about it too hard and let's enjoy the stories. But now they actually kind of gave us an explanation because the town of Sonnambula and presumably other locations in the distant corners, at least southern reaches of Equestria, seem to have kind of their own separate culture. They seem to be very secluded and disconnected from, other locations like Canterlot, Manhattan, Las Pegasus, all that stuff, like the modern pop culture area. They're kind of in their own little world down there. So for them, they only see and apparently that's where all these places are, where there's these ruins and the relics that Daring Do is trying to save and whatnot. So it makes sense by having that separation of cultures within the borders of Equestria. It allows for her to have like her books over here and her actual adventures over here, and the two don't really interact much enough to ever have that be revealed. It's maybe not the best explanation, but it's an explanation. So I really applaud the writers for at least trying to give us that. So yeah. As far as the actual like moral issue in this episode, the overall issue of driving the story, it does make a lot of sense. It's like I said earlier in the reaction, it's this superhero issue. You see this a lot in like Marvel comics and stuff, in the Marvel universe, probably the DC universe as well. So whenever you have heroes and villains and there's conflicts and stuff, they typically leave some path of like destruction and negative consequences in their wake, and she's no different than that. And it's easy to see kind of the two sides of it. Daring Do probably saw that it's like, hey, I've saved these people from all the certain doom and horrible evil. The fallout from this is insignificant, it's meaningless, it's not that big of a deal. I don't think she intentionally tried to take advantage of them, she just never thought it was worth considering. Whereas from their perspective, that these ponies didn't even know who Awizoda was, and so on. They don't even know that she saved them from certain doom. All they can see is every time she shows up, that she makes a mess and they have to clean up after her, and and stuff. So it was actually really cool the way this all played out, is where she, as her AK yearling persona, was able to hide in plain sight and actually see their side of the story. She understands now why the statue was so important to them. She understands why the actions that she took, left a bitter taste in their mouth, and so on. So the seeds of discontent were, definitely sown there. They had some bitterness towards her. But then, Caballeron came along and just completely blew the thing out of proportion with all the, the misinformation and lies and whatever. And I got to give credit for where credit's due. I mean, for all this guy's, absurdities, he actually pulled off an ingenious plan. And he won. He had won. Okay? He intended to use this to ruin her reputation amongst the ponies that actually knew the real her, and crush her spirit in the process. And he did it. She was done. She had published her resignation, she had announced her retirement. Like, after this book, I'm done. I'm hanging it up. I'm not doing this anymore. And that would have been fantastic for him, because he would have been able to just loot all the ruins he wanted and take all the artifacts and cause all manner of chaos, because there would have been nobody to stop him. And so he had won. If not for Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie, it would have been over. But fortunately, they came along to try and fix the situation. So I got to give him credit. I don't understand why he later shot himself in the foot, but it's like after they got found out with the Glowpass thefts and stuff. He should have just like skipped town right then and there. But he stood around monologuing like the classic cliche villain that he is. There's so many cliches in this episode. I don't necessarily hate them. I mean, cliches can be fun if used tastefully, but that one was an eye roller, most definitely. So, but anyways, at least give him credit for kind of pulling off a plan. I just wish he'd been able to, not quite look like such an imbecile after the fact. But whatever. And yes, I should have recognized him as soon as he spoke the first time he appeared. I didn't, but I was a little bit my mind was a little bit tied up at the moment, trying to process the other character I had just seen, which is a Grand Pair recolor with an apple cutie mark. You know why my brain was stuck on that. I'm trying to figure out who is this and what is going on here. After thinking about it, I'm not ready to say that he must be a member of the Apple family just because of the cutie mark, because no, don't forget, Flim and Flam have Apple cutie marks, and they are most definitely not members of the Apple family. I think if it ever actually is revealed that they are somehow distantly related, I think Applejack is probably going to have a stroke or something, so that better not ever happen. But yeah, I don't know if he's an extended, distant family member or not. Hard to say. Not really important. I do wish he'd been given a name, though, because he had a pretty notable role in the show, like giving us the whole backstory and Sonnambula and everything. He was not credited with a name in the end credits, but I did look at his cutie mark. I looked up on that. The blossom that's on there looks to me an awful lot like, I could be wrong, but it looks a lot like the crabapple blossom. So I'm going to call this guy Crabapple until I hear otherwise. So it was just fun seeing that character. I wish he hadn't voiced the Sphinx and Sonnambula during that story, because that was weird hearing that voice. Maybe someday Sonnambula will actually get a real voice or something if she ever appears again. Well, we'll have to see. But anyway, moving on to Rainbow Dash. Predictably, she had a definite freak out over this announcement. I actually didn't think she went nearly as crazy overboard as I would have expected her to. So, it was nice to see that as a little bit more contained. But it's easy to see that right away. She's got her own kind of personal agenda, personal reasons, and maybe a bit selfish reasons for, freaking out over this. Like, oh no, I'm not going to get any more of my most favorite stories ever and stuff. I mean, I don't even really want to fault her for that. I mean, anybody would be disappointed to hear stuff like that, and anybody, for personal reasons would want to see that continue somehow. I mean, that's going to be us someday when this show is over, MLP is over. Well, at least this generation is over, and we're going to wish it wasn't, perhaps, but everything has to come to an end sometime. So I empathize with her on that. But I give her major credit for the fact that, in addition to that, she was really doing her best to help out Daring Do because of the fact that she is good friends with her and actually legitimately cares about her well-being, aside from the fact that she's writing books. And it's not an unreal thing either. She and Daring Do very much have a legitimate friendship at hand. I mean, look how many times they've saved each other's tails in these crazy adventures that they've been on and stuff. I've lost count of who saved who how many times here. So, that it's more than just Rainbow Dash fangirling over this stuff. The two are very much friends. And Rainbow Dash recognized that she was ready to just, tear apart whoever had potentially wronged Daring Do to begin with, and was maybe blackmailing her or something. I mean, you saw Dash back in that cottage. I mean, she was ready for anything. But as usual, Dash tends to go a little bit overboard on some of the stuff. She gets a little bit overzealous in her efforts, and Pinky, of all ponies, ended up being kind of the cool, calm voice of reason in this. I mean, it's so awesome seeing Pinky's maturity in this. She's still the warm, cheerful, bubbly, happy, wacky pony that we know and love, but yet she's reached a level of emotional maturity that has been fantastic to see for her. you know, the way that she, well, first of all, she saw right through, you know, Rainbow Dash's, you know, reasons for like, oh, you sure you don't just want this so you get more books, you know, like, well, that might be part of it, but no, we really need to help her, you know. She saw through that, and when Rainbow Dash is like basically in Daring Do's face demanding answers, demanding explanations, you know, Pinky is kind of just pushing her back, and it's like, well, you know, we'd really love to, you know, to hear and what's going on and help out if we can, but if, you know, if you really don't want to tell us, you don't have to. That's your choice. We'll respect your privacy, you know, that type of thing. So she really kind of, you know, got Dash to back down a little bit, kept her in check, and then later in the episode, in that scene that scene where they were discussing things after AK ran off out in the desert, you know, like right before they went to the hotel. Dash wanted to tear after her immediately. Pinky is like, I don't know if we really want to do that. Like, you know, she made it pretty clear that she doesn't really want us, you know, interfering in this, that type of thing. But then Dash made her case and said, hey, as you know, there are ponies that really appreciate her and need her, and we, you know, as her friends, we need to convince her of that. We need to help her see that and understand that. And then Pinky was in agreement, and they proceeded to chase after her and did their best to help out. So you know, here again, Rainbow Dash's true friendship is showing through on this. She'd kind of put aside the whole thing about the books, and it's like, hey, I care about my friend. That's all I'm concerned about right now. And I gotta say that moment was actually very interesting. I kind of picked up on this as it's kind of like a secondary story thread in all of this. They really kind of touched on the whole, you know, issue of like events that can lead a person into depression and potentially even driving so far as to things like suicide. Because, you know, seeing where AK was going, I mean, like I said, she was, you know, going to stop doing adventures, going to stop writing about adventures. That's her entire life. So she was basically ready to just completely shut off her life and disappear. And, you know, I said it was done in a very safe manner, but I could see the parallels there. I said, you know, there are a lot of people in this world that deal with a lot of, you know, issues in their personal lives, and, you know, they get depressed by all, you know, issues going on in the world and everything around them, and they get to the point where they feel like they have no friends, that, you know, nobody cares about them, they don't have any worth, and that everything they try to do, they just screw up and make lives worse for people around them. So like, what's the point? You know, I'm just gonna check out. That's really what it felt like to me there. It's very subtle, but it felt like there were some definite parallels there. And I think the lesson in that is that, you know, hey, stuff like that can happen, but, you know, our takeaway from that is that if we see our friends, you know, sinking into that kind of pit of despair and depression like that, we have to take notice of that, and we have to go try and help them as best as we can. We can't just let them run off and get into a dark place on their own. That's not right of us as friends. It's our responsibility to do our best to help them out. So I really applaud Rainbow Dash for pushing on that. So with that said, that was kind of the secondary thing. The main focus, obviously, moral-wise, was on Daring Do herself, and, you know, her needing to recognize the fact that she needed to take responsibility for her actions, and instead of just running away from stuff, you know, own up to it and do her best to make it right, make reparations. You know, I said, I don't think she ever intentionally wanted to hurt anyone. She just didn't see the harm that she was actually causing. So, you know, I loved seeing her just go through all the, you know, checking everything off at the end there. She, you know, got the you know, Crab Apple a new, you know, apple cart or whatever there. He you know, paid the bill at the hotel. I wonder how rich Daring Do is, honestly. But, you know, paid up the bill, and then it looks like she had something to do with the restoration of that statue. It's hard to say exactly what she did there, but just glad to see her kind of covering the bases and, you know, making things right at the end. So awesome, you know, moral lessons for that. Just good lessons for us to remember, too. It's so easy to just, you know, run away from, you know, from our issues and stuff, and it's really hard to try and own up to issues and make things right in the real world. It really is. And depending on how badly you screwed up, sometimes it's really, really, really hard to come back from stuff. But, you know, if you at least try, things can definitely improve. If you don't try, things won't improve. So, yeah, moving on from all of that, as far as the Sonnambula story, I don't really feel the need to rehash that. I mean, you watched it in the episode. It's a pretty clear-cut story. I loved the story, as I mentioned. You know, awesome messages of, you know, hope and faith and whatever. It's easy to see, based on that story, why the townspeople were so angry over the destruction of the statue of Sonnambula and the theft of the glow pads, because they were both very distinct symbols of the what she had done for their civilization, their culture, and their town. And that'd be enough to make anybody mad, honestly. So it's fun to see that, and it's interesting to see the way that the situation with the Sphinx in Sonnambula in the past was sort of replicated with, in the present day by Caballeron against Daring Do and such. I said, clearly it's a little bit different situation, but it was very interesting. I found it intriguing that that spell was still in place in that chamber. They said the Sphinx cast that spell. So for that spell to still be in effect, I'm thinking that means that Sphinx is still around somewhere. I mean, a lot of these mythological creatures have very long lifespans. I haven't researched the Sphinx extensively, but it stands to reason that could still be a thing. So I would say there's a possibility we may yet see that creature again someday. And again, hopefully get an actual, voiced, a reasonable voice for it, because it's just weird hearing that old guy voice for the Sphinx. But and yeah, I'm aware actually that that Wubcake, member of the fandom, already did a dub over the voice for the Sphinx and just nailed it. So thank you for that. But yeah, I think that magic is still active there because being the cast that is still around, and that kind of ties into the thing too. The thing that bugged me about that scene is the Deus Ex Machina of the sudden magical appearance of these air vents that allowed a path across this pit of bubbling goo, acid, whatever it was. That really kind of annoyed me. I'm not always opposed to plot devices like that, but that one was just way too easy, way too rushed. But it did kind of occur to me, I kind of have an in-universe explanation for this. With that magic being active in that cavern, looking at the parallels, Pinky in her own way kind of went down the same path that Sonnambula did. Pinky has, this very positive attitude, and she has this constant hope that, and belief that things are going to work out for the better. And she was willing to take that blind leap of faith to prove that she was firm in that belief. And it's a little bit different, but she kind of ultimately did the same trials that Sonnambula did. And I'm wondering if the magic that's from that Sphinx that's still active in that cavern recognized the fulfillment of those trials and basically provided a solution that allowed them to save their friend. It's definitely a stretch, don't get me wrong. It's really out there, but it's something my brain came up with that makes me not hate the sudden appearance of these air vent things quite so much. So if you like that solution, great. If you think it's ridiculous, I don't necessarily disagree with you. It is what it is. Make of it what you want. So, but as far as the Sphinx, I do have to share something real quick. This is going completely off chart, unrelated to the episode. But one of my close friends linked me to some stuff he was looking up about the Sphinx on Wikipedia, and came across a very interesting thing. I mean, it's talking about how Sphinxes always had riddles that you had to solve, lest you basically die a horrible death or something. But so there is one common riddle that most of the lore, agrees on. This was the riddle asked by the Sphinx. It's different than the one that was in this episode, because the one in this episode was tailored specifically to the story. That's not important. I don't care about that one. You can go look it up for yourself. The one that I am interested in is that there are certain accounts. It's much more rare, but there are certain accounts of these riddles where there is a second riddle offered by the Sphinx. And this one reads as, there are two sisters. One gives birth to the other, and she, in turn, gives birth to the first. Who are the two sisters? And the appropriate answer is day and night. The ancient Greek words for day and night are feminine, as in the matter of that language. So, hence, sisters. Remind you of anyone? We knew Lauren Faust was really big on all this mythology stuff, and we know she pushed the writers to dig into the mythology and stuff to make interesting creatures and storylines and stuff in the episodes. Didn't really know just how deep into the stuff that she got, but I think we might just... Either this is a seriously incredible coincidence, or we may just have figured out where she got the idea from for the whole concept of Celestia and Luna. And for all I know, maybe this was already known where she got that idea from, and I just didn't know that. All I know is when I read this blew my mind. So I said either an incredible coincidence or actual, lore that she was basing things on. So it's interesting that we actually touch on that after all this time. So, but anyway, the only other thing regarding Sonnambula, the thing I'm confused about, I touched on this briefly at the end of my reaction. There was 2 mentions in the series about spells from Sonnambula. There was back in the Crystalling. At the end of that, Sunburst was pulling out some spells to fix a bunch of things, and he mentioned Sonnambula's Weather Abjuration spell to deal with the snowstorm. That confuses me because obviously we know Pegasi have magic, and they definitely have the abilities to manage and control the weather. But we have never really heard it. The weather control stuff has always been much more like, mechanical, industrial type stuff. We've never really heard anything to do with Pegasi magic referred to as spells. So, is this something from ancient history? Did they have different terminology for their stuff back then? Did they refer to some of their methods as spells? Different kind of spell than what unicorns use? I don't know. Maybe they just threw that in the episode before they ever decided to actually introduce the character of Sonnambula and make her a Pegasus instead of a unicorn. That could be a thing too. It could just be a continuity error. But it's very curious. But then the other thing is, there is another mention of Sonnambula in the Season 7 premiere in the hypothetical scenario Twilight presented where Starlight and Sunburst were working together on magic in the Crystal Empire, and they were conjuring up a spell to retrieve an item that was lost in the past and ended up sucking everything into a black hole in the process. Starlight had a line there where she said, well, maybe if we use Sonnambula's Tempus Objectus, which is basically, my understanding, is Latin for time object. That has nothing to do with weather whatsoever, so I don't know how that could possibly relate to any of this. Again, maybe it's just, writing continuity errors, but it's curious. And you could write that off as like that was just some artifact from one of Twilight's delusions that doesn't have to actually make sense in the real world. I don't know, but I get the feeling that there's a lot more to this Sonnambula character than we've been told thus far, and I cannot wait to get the comics and see more stuff and see where they take this character, because it could be some very interesting things there. But anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Just a couple final little things here. I know this is running very long, I'm so sorry, but the Parasprite infestation thing was fun to touch on. The season of callbacks continues. That goes all the way back to Swarm of the Century in Season 1. I really kind of hope that isn't the same infestation as they had back then, because that means it's been going on for 6 years. But if not, then that means that infestations of Parasprites are a recurring thing. So that kind of raises questions too. But yeah. And then this is the final thing. The character that was the hostess at the hotel in here, I'm sure she was supposed to be a reference to some character in some other movie or TV show or something. Her name was credited in the VA credits as Mrs. Trotsworth. So, again, it's probably a reference to something. Haven't looked it up. But the interesting thing is who voiced this character. She was voiced by Janice Jude. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. That is the first character that she has voiced in Gen 4 of MLP, but she is very well known for voicing Pinkie Pie in Gen 3 of My Little Pony. So, yeah, another callback to G3, with this time in the form of a voice actor coming back. So, and it's actually kind of fun because her character got to interact with the present Pinkie Pie in Gen 4. So, yeah, it's another fun little Easter egg thing that they gave us there. So, yeah, that's all I got on this episode. Thank you so much for hanging around for all my long rambling again. But this has been a great episode to pick apart and stuff. And yeah, again, with these legends, I cannot wait to see where they go with this. It's getting very interesting very quickly. So, looking forward to that season finale when that finally rolls around. But for tonight, I got to wrap this up. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you again next time for the next episode. Later.